In this video, I'm going to show you how to do an oil change on this Toyota Camry with a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder engine. If you need any parts for your car, check us out at 2AR-FE.com. Let's get started. Just keep in mind, other than your oil filter and oil itself, you do need this special oil filter socket so you can get the oil filter housing off. Looking underneath the passenger side of your engine, you're going to see your engine oil pan right here, not to be confused with what's on the driver's side, which is your transmission pan. This has a 14mm drain bolt, so let's grab a socket or a wrench and remove it. This shouldn't be extremely tight. Once you turn it a few turns, you should be able to remove it by hand, not with a tool. And once I am starting to do this by hand, I'm going to keep inward pressure on the bolt so that once it gets to the last thread, which you'll know because it starts to skip like that, pull it away quickly, and that should allow you to make no mess when you pull this out. If you go slow, it's going to start splashing all over the plug and get all over the place. Of course, I'm going to let all of this drain into my collection bucket that's down here. While that's draining, I'm going to look at my drain plug and inspect it, make sure it's still good. The threads are good, this is good, and of course the gasket is still in good condition. I recommend replacing it every time you do an oil change, but you don't have to. If you don't have one, you can reuse these. Just make sure you don't reuse them for too long because they will start leaking eventually. Recenter your collection bucket underneath the oil filter housing, which is towards the front of the vehicle, in front of the oil pan. This would be the oil pan right here. And use a 3/8 drive extension or directly your ratchet to remove this cap, which is basically just a drain for the housing. There we go. Sometimes these are a little tight. Pull this off. And your oil filter should have come with a little plug that you can push in here in order to help drain the oil filter housing. Just let that drain for a minute. I'm going to call this done. So I'm going to pull this plug off of here, and there's an O-ring here. I like to replace it now because I do want to cap this off at this point so that when I put my main oil filter wrench on here or socket, oil doesn't get all over my socket. So I'm going to remove this O-ring, replace it, which should be in your kit. There should be 2 O-rings in your kit. I'm going to plug this up and then remove the housing itself. You can do that later if you choose to do so. I just choose to do it now. To get this out, you can use a pocket screwdriver or just your fingernail and pull the O-ring off, clean off the area a little bit. Get a new O-ring seated on here. You're gonna have to hold it on as you put this cap back over. Thread this on, make sure that O-ring is seating in the groove and isn't getting pinched on the sides. There we go. This being just a plug, just snug it up once it bottoms out. Give it about 1/8 of a turn. That should be good to go right there. Now, let's get our main socket and remove the entire oil filter housing. This right here is your oil filter socket, and it's got these grooves on each side that need to fit on the grooves that are on the oil filter housing, just like so. Put a 3/8 drive extension in here, and let's break it free. Okay, looks like we need a bigger tool. Sometimes you need a little bit more leverage with these, even though you really shouldn't, and if they're not over tightened. But I'm going to step it up to a 27mm socket and a 1/2 inch longer leverage ratchet. There we go. That broke free. Finish removing this. Once you get it off most of the way, you should be able to remove it the rest of the way by hand. And there it is. Drain this in your collection bucket. In here, you want to inspect the engine side of the housing. Make sure everything's good. I'm going to wipe off anything that's dripping. And now, grab the other side of the housing and replace that filter. Do not spray anything, such as brake parts cleaner, in here. Just wipe it off with a paper towel or a rag of some sort and leave it as is. That will get full of oil as soon as you start your engine, so it does not need to be dry and spotlessly clean. You just need to stop the drippage so that you can move your collection bucket out of the way and work here without getting dripped on. Take that oil filter housing cap, remove the oil filter, just simply pull it away, inspect this side of it. This is plastic, so if it has any damage, cracks, or the threads are in poor condition, replace this because you don't want this to come off. You would lose oil pressure and ruin your engine. Having said that, I'm going to clean this with my rag and maybe a little bit of brake parts cleaner, just so I can prevent all of this oil from dripping on the outside, and then we'll install a new O-ring here. To get this old one off, sometimes you can just squeeze it like this. That'll basically push the O-ring, and you can grab it, slide it right off. All right, now we're ready to clean this. It's okay to spray brake parts cleaner in this side of the oil filter housing. However, you only want to do that if you're going to make sure that it is all out of there and completely dry. Blow some compressed air if you have access to it. You don't want to leave any brake parts cleaner in there. Now with this clean, take your new O-ring, slide it over the threads, and make sure you run it all the way down into that groove that it sits in. There we go. Perfect. Take your new oil filter and slide it into this housing here. It's non-directional, doesn't matter which way you put it on. Once you have it in, this is what it should look like. It should protrude out past the threads a little bit. Now take the oil filter housing, line it up, and thread it in. Make sure you thread it in by hand and make sure it threads on smoothly. If it doesn't, it's most likely because it's cross-threading or something is not lined up properly. Once it hits the O-ring here on the housing, it will get a little bit snug, so yes, you can use your tool after that, but make sure you're still threading it on smoothly. The torque for this is 25 Newton meters. That converts to 18.4 foot-pounds. That's it right there. If you don't have a torque wrench that'll torque this, well, just make it nice and snug after it bottoms out. Basically, at most, 1/8 of a turn, if not less. This is just plastic, and if you crack it, that's gonna be a problem. Because I reinstalled this cap earlier, I know it's already tight, so I'm good to go there. At this point, the oil is pretty much done draining, so I'm gonna plug this back up, thread the drain plug in all the way. Once it bottoms out, we're going to torque it, and the torque for this is 25 foot-pounds. All right, wipe off any drippage. That way you don't confuse it for a potential oil leak. Now under the hood, at the front of your engine, you'll see the oil filler cap. Before removing it, it's a good idea to blow or wipe off any debris that is around here so that nothing gets in the engine. Now, to remove it, just unthread it. Sometimes you might need pliers for this. They get stuck on from heat cycles. As you can see, once again, 0W20 is the oil type you need, and this engine takes 4.6 quarts of this, so that just means a little bit over 4.5 quarts. It is important that you use the right viscosity as well as the right amount of oil. If you want to use a funnel, go ahead. If not, try not to spill it everywhere. All right, I'm on my last quart. And this one, because it takes 4.6, I'm only going to put about, well, 0.6 quarts of this one, just over half. All right, right about there should be plenty. Of course, we're going to measure it, but you want to start off approximately in that range. With the oil filled, cap this off. Make sure you snug this up, but don't make it too tight. If it takes a lot of force to open it, that's too tight. Just snug. Towards the front of your engine, you'll see this yellow dipstick. This is for your engine oil. Remove it, wipe it off as you remove it because it's not going to read much at this point. It's going to give you a false reading. So once you wipe it off, stick it back in all the way down and then pull it back up. Don't wipe it this time because we're trying to read the level. As you can see, it has two little dots here. The oil needs to be right in between these two dots. I am just a smidge over the top one, but that's okay. The engine has not ran yet, so as soon as we run it, and it's recommended to do so before you check the oil level, it's going to be most likely right at the full mark, if not slightly below. If you're close to this bottom dot, it's probably because you need to add some and you didn't put enough to begin with. And between the bottom and the top should be just about a quart of oil. Keep that in mind. You want to be as close as possible, if not spot on, to the top. So having said that, let's turn on the engine. I'll show you how to reset that oil change reminder as well. To reset your maintenance reminder, put the key in the ignition, turn it to the on position. So that's 2 clicks. And you're going to want to scroll over to trip A. Once you're on trip A, shut this back off. Have one hand ready to press the trip button and the other hand ready to turn the key to the on position. So hold this down, turn it to the on position, and you'll see these lines start to blink. Keep holding. Once they disappear, a bunch of zeros pop up. You can let go, and that tells you that your maintenance reminder, also known as your oil change reminder, has been reset. Now you can turn on your engine. Everything is running smoothly, so we're good to go. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it was helpful. If you have anything to say, leave it in the comments section below. And as always, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so you can stay up to date with all of our latest content. Thanks for watching.